This girl, from the moment she was born, faced immense hardship. Because of this, she resolved to work tirelessly when she grew up to change her family's difficult situation. While her peers attended parades and celebrations, she listened to English, practiced speaking, and worked part-time jobs wherever she could find them. After work, she would study late into the night at her desk. From her first day on the job, Hyunjin endured the judgmental stares of her colleagues in her pursuit of advancement. She constantly flattered her superiors, attended every social gathering, and maintained a constant presence. She always took on the most challenging tasks, solely to earn a promotion and a raise. Her colleagues, however, didn't acknowledge her efforts, seeing her only as fake and two-faced. Finally, Hyunjin's hard work paid off. She became the youngest executive director in the company. Just as she was reveling in her promotion, she discovered she was pregnant. As an older, expectant mother, the doctor advised her to pay special attention to her health and avoid overworking. But for Hyunjin, success was paramount. Beyond that, after years of marriage, she also hoped to complete their family with a child and eagerly awaited the baby's arrival. What she didn't anticipate was achieving both her desires, the promotion and the pregnancy simultaneously. She found herself in a dilemma. Work and childbirth couldn't coexist. She had worked tirelessly for years to achieve her current status. If she took maternity leave now, her position as director would certainly be jeopardized. Years of hard work could vanish into thin air. Hyunjin wrestled with this for a long time, feeling that both her career and her child were essential. With her growing belly, she continued to wear high heels every day, fighting fiercely in the workplace, without even the time to attend prenatal classes. Her husband, Do-yoon, attended the classes in her place, faithfully relaying the information to her afterward. Returning home, Hyunjin wearily removed her work clothes. Do-yoon picked them up from the floor. She looked at herself in the mirror, then at her stretch-marked belly, and sighed. After changing, she put on her compression stockings to prevent varicose veins. Do-yoon pressed his face against her belly, talking to their son, hoping to familiarize the baby with his voice so that coming into this strange world wouldn't be so frightening. At night, pregnancy symptoms like nausea kept Hyunjin awake. She went to the living room alone and sat down heavily. With only 2 days until her due date, she still wasn't mentally prepared for motherhood. To ease her anxiety, she talked to her baby, who seemed to understand, responding with encouraging movements. Even this close to her due date, Hyunjin remained dedicated to her work. To secure a contract with a client, she drove herself, weaving through traffic. She stopped the client just as they were about to leave, assertively negotiating the deal in fluent English. Finally, she secured the contract. At that very moment, her water broke. She calmly said goodbye to the client, ensuring her staff continued the discussion, and called the hospital. Do-yoon, upon receiving the news, immediately stopped his car, leaving his colleague by the roadside, and rushed to the hospital. Anticipating an early delivery, Do-yoon kept a prepared bag in his car at all times. The maternity bag contained supplies for Hyunjin, the baby, and hospital necessities. The anxious husband arrived at the hospital to find Hyunjin in bed. She wasn't experiencing contractions, yet her water breaking was the first stage of labor. The doctor first administered an enema to clear her bowels and prevent straining during delivery. Next came the preparation of the bikini area to prevent bacterial infection during childbirth and facilitate catheter insertion afterward. The second stage brought indescribable pain. Hyunjin cried out in agony, a scene only those who have given birth can truly understand. She desperately hoped for pain relief. Then came the third stage, the calm before the storm. The agonizing pain temporarily subsided, offering a brief respite. This was a moment to check her phone or read a book. And so, the final stage of labor arrived, the contractions continuing. Hyunjin cried out hoarsely, pushing with all her might. The doctor pressed on her abdomen to help deliver the baby. After her cervix was fully dilated, Hyunjin was taken to the delivery room. Exhausted, she just wanted to close her eyes and rest. But if a woman stops pushing, exceeding the expected time frame, both mother and child are at risk. Everyone shouted to rouse Hyunjin. 1, 2, 3. The baby was finally born. Hyunjin looked at the child, his skin red and wrinkled, and realized he was far from what she had imagined. After a night's rest, Hyunjin awoke with a parched mouth, weakly asking for water. Her husband and parents were gathered around the baby. The grandparents beamed at their grandson, saying he was well-behaved and hadn't caused any trouble. Do-yoon responded to his mother, saying Hyunjin had endured a difficult labor. His mother dismissed it, claiming childbirth was nothing, that the sight of the baby instantly erased all pain and hardship. But for Hyunjin, the pain felt etched into her bones. Watching her in-laws and husband dote on the baby, Hyunjin felt a pang of loneliness. Her own mother arrived at the hospital. Her daughter had just returned from the gates of hell, yet her in-laws seemed focused only on the newborn. Hyunjin's mother moistened a cotton pad with water and wiped her daughter's chapped lips. Hyunjin burst into tears. While everyone celebrated the new life, only her mother cared for her well-being, heartbroken for her weakened daughter. After her parents left, the couple were alone with their baby. Looking at the tiny angel in the bassinet, they felt a mixture of awe and fear towards their new roles. The baby cried incessantly, and the new parents fumbled awkwardly. Their first instinct was to press the call button for the nurse. They stood by helplessly, unsure how to soothe their child. Before pregnancy, Hyunjin loved coffee. 1 cup could erase a day's fatigue. But during her pregnancy, everyone warned her against it. She reluctantly gave up coffee, switching to fruit juice for the baby's health. Now, every meal included seaweed soup, believed to promote milk production. She thought she could return to her old life after giving birth, enjoying the iced coffee she craved, but her mother confiscated it. She had to focus on postpartum recovery, shattering her dreams. She'd imagined regaining her pre-pregnancy figure, but her body remained heavy. Even sitting down caused sharp pain from the episiotomy. The doctor told Hyunjin that if she couldn't urinate normally, she would need a catheter. Hearing that catheter insertion was painful and hearing the screams of a woman in the next room, Hyunjin sat on her bed, desperately trying to figure out how to urinate. Then she remembered coffee. 1 sip, she was sure, would do the trick. She went to the hospital lobby and finally bought a cup. Hoping to avoid her mother returning from the market, she turned around to see her mother entering the hospital. Hyunjin hid her coffee and slipped into the elevator. Inside, she encountered Eun-young, who had also just given birth. Hyunjin looked at Eun-young, sighing inwardly. Youth had its advantages. Eun-young seemed to have bounced back quickly. Suddenly, Eun-young sneezed forcefully, leaking urine. She hurried out of the elevator. Back in her room, Hyunjin's coffee was confiscated by her mother before she could take a single sip. Lying dejectedly in bed, she suddenly felt the urge to urinate and rushed to the bathroom. She had avoided the dreaded catheter. On the day of their discharge, Hyunjin clutched her baby, fearful of hospital germs reaching him. She remained vigilant throughout the journey home, instructing her husband to drive carefully and avoid any bumps. She also insisted on quiet, afraid of startling the newborn. A family of 3 drove straight to the postpartum care center. As soon as they got out of the car, a nurse took the baby. From now on, someone would meticulously care for their child. Hyunjin, the director of the center, personally greeted them and led them to her office. The walls were covered with awards and certificates praising the center. Yoon helped her sit down. First, Haesuk, the owner/head of the center, asked her to choose her favorite type of camellia tea. At this moment, Hyunjin could finally relax, no longer needing to anxiously worry about whether the delivery had gone smoothly. Haesuk held Hyunjin's hand, deeply empathizing with her. Although people often said having a child was a wonderful experience, the recovery process was challenging for women who had endured the unforgettable pain of childbirth. These words resonated with Hyunjin. Haesuk assured her that if she followed the center's program step by step, she would definitely be able to return to her former self. Reassured, Hyunjin entrusted herself to Haesuk's care. Haesuk led her to the courtyard. The courtyard was filled with various flowers. The tranquil atmosphere was incredibly relaxing and designed to soothe the minds of new mothers. There was also an instructor who would guide the mothers through exercises to rehabilitate their posture and pelvis strained from pregnancy. Additionally, massage therapists were available to help them regain their pre-pregnancy figures. On the nutritional side, a professional chef curated scientifically balanced meals. In the nursery, experienced nurses provided 24/7 care. Parents could see their babies anytime through cameras. Finally, they arrived at Hyunjin's room. The temperature and humidity were regulated by light, creating an optimal environment for mother and baby. After the complete tour, Haesuk left. Exhausted, Hyunjin just wanted to rest. That evening, Haesuk rang her doorbell. Without a word, she began to massage Hyunjin's breasts. Hyunjin looked at her with a startled expression, slightly intimidated by Haesuk's intense demeanor. Through touch, Haesuk listed a series of Hyunjin's irregular habits, frequent overtime work, late-night snacking, and so on. She also deduced that Hyunjin must hold a high position at her company, given her age. Hyunjin was surprised. How did Haesuk know her so well? Haesuk explained that a woman's breasts could reveal a lot about her daily habits. Then, she told Hyunjin it was time to breastfeed. The first hurdle of motherhood was breastfeeding regardless of day or night, around the clock. During the night, she was awakened. Her husband beside her was still half asleep. Hyunjin went to the nursing room. Initially, Hyunjin imagined the room to be a haven. Mothers were attentively caring for their babies. The scene appeared peaceful and beautiful, like a mythical goddess from a film, serene and tranquil. However, Hyunjin gradually realized something. No one here cared about her name, job title, or social status. Everyone was focused on their babies' names, genders, and the hospitals where they were born. Just then, another new mother entered the nursing room. She had naturally delivered twins at 24 months and was exclusively breastfeeding. Her husband was a famous golfer. Everyone wanted to befriend her and ask for parenting advice. Hyunjin was also curious about this mother. Upon seeing her, Hyunjin realized she was the woman who had peed in the hospital elevator. The seemingly perfect mother, Eun-young, pretended not to recognize Hyunjin. Everyone surrounded Eun-young, admiring how she had regained her pre-pregnancy figure. Hyunjin overheard their conversation, rolling her eyes internally at their obliviousness. Eun-young was clearly feigning ignorance. Hyunjin was called to breastfeed. The nurse touched her breasts again and, based on the shape of her nipples, predicted that her breastfeeding journey would be very difficult. Hyunjin received her son from the nurse. In her imagination, breastfeeding was a tender, intimate exchange between mother and child. But in the next moment, Hyunjin cried out in pain. The baby, startled, began to cry as well. The other babies in the room joined in, creating a chorus of wails. Hyunjin apologized to everyone. And so, her first attempt at breastfeeding came to an abrupt end. In the garden, Ji-yoon was hanging a banner that read, "Thank you, wife, for giving birth to our son," and decorating with balloons. Jun-suk appeared in the courtyard, happy to find a kindred spirit. Ji-yoon complained about Hyunjin's erratic mood swings after giving birth. He was at a loss, completely unaware of what he was doing wrong. Jun-suk calmly offered his insights. Women are incredibly sensitive postpartum, so the best approach is to avoid upsetting them. Men can't understand these emotions, so the only thing to do is be accommodating and forgiving. Be there for your wife when she needs you. When she's angry and having a meltdown, be smart and imagine yourself strolling through a forest, basking in the sunshine. Mid-conversation, Jun-suk's wife called. They hastily ended their chat and made plans to have breakfast together the next morning. Back in her room, Hyunjin regretted her outburst in the nursing room and the missed opportunity to breastfeed. She simply felt inadequate as a mother. Ji-yoon entered the room and asked, "Why are you back so early? Weren't you breastfeeding?" Hyunjin, already distressed about this, interpreted his question as mockery and flew into a rage. Ji-yoon, remembering Jun-suk's advice, tried to imagine himself strolling in a forest but couldn't help but crack a smile. Hyunjin exploded, "I'm miserable, and you're grinning." At breakfast, Eun-young saw Hyunjin and greeted her warmly, inviting her to join their table. The other mothers fawned over Eun-young, a minor social media influencer who frequently shared her daily life with her children. She was essentially a public figure within the mommy circles, regularly attending mothers' gatherings. This common ground instantly bonded the other mothers. Hyunjin found Eun-young insincere. Eun-young, sensing Hyunjin's disapproval, tried to engage her in conversation. However, Hyunjin's approach to motherhood was vastly different from Eun-young's. Eun-young spent her pregnancy painting and playing music while Hyunjin watched zombie movies and listened to remixes. She was beginning to realize she and these other mothers were worlds apart. Ji-yoon and Jun-suk enjoyed breakfast together. Finding the center's food bland, Jun-suk took Ji-yoon to a hole-in-the-wall restaurant for a proper meal. Ji-yoon savored his first spicy beef stew in a long time. Jun-suk reminded him to brush his teeth afterward. If their wives discovered their secret spicy beef stew outing, they would both be in hot water. Jun-suk's wealth of experience stemmed from this being his fourth time at a postpartum care center. His wife called to check on him and he calmly lied, claiming he was out buying her favorite macarons, even going so far as to have the shop staff cover for him. Ji-yoon absorbed it all, gaining valuable new knowledge. Back at the center, the mothers were having tea. Hyunjin wrinkled her nose. "This is awful." The conversation turned to breastfeeding and domesticity. Eun-young staunchly advocated for 24 months of exclusive breastfeeding, citing benefits for the child's physical and intellectual development. She subtly criticized working mothers for neglecting their children, her comments clearly directed at Hyunjin. Hyunjin retorted, arguing that stay-at-home mothers had nothing better to do. Providing a comfortable life for her child by working was more important than staying home all day. Eun-young bristled at this. Hyunjin had instantly become the common enemy. Initially unconcerned, Hyunjin was pulled aside by another mother who warned her that she had made a serious mistake. Yoonji explained that in this postpartum care center, no one cared about educational background or societal contributions. The only thing that mattered was a mother's level of sacrifice for her child. Based on these efforts, mothers were ranked, with a top mother and a bottom mother. For example, Eun-young, who breastfed exclusively for 24 months and stayed home full-time, was undoubtedly a top mother. The bottom mother was typically a first-time mom struggling with milk production, often older and lacking experience. In other words, someone like Hyunjin, Yoonji offered a single solution to improve Hyunjin's standing: breastfeed successfully. In this world of mothers, milk supply equated to maternal love. The more milk, the greater the perceived love for the child. Mrs. Hae-suk sought out Hyunjin, hoping she'd apologize to Eun-young. Hyunjin, a seasoned professional, naturally refused. Mrs. Hae-suk pointed out that Hyunjin would inevitably need Eun-young's help at the postpartum care center. Fuming, Hyunjin returned to her room to find oxtail soup her husband had brought. Remembering her low status at the center, she snapped at him and kicked him out. A dejected Do-yoon went to Jun-suk, who took him shopping and shared baby product tips. They even cheerfully learned about breast massage. Afterwards, they said their goodbyes. Jun-suk was leaving the center the next day. Though bittersweet, no party lasts forever. Hyunjin received a call from a nurse summoning her back to the breastfeeding room. She gave herself a pep talk, determined to succeed. This small hurdle was nothing. Reality, however, was harsh. At the breastfeeding room, she was ostracized. Other mothers shared tips amongst themselves, excluding her. Her second breastfeeding attempt failed. Filled with disappointment and anxiety, Hyunjin faced her third attempt. The nurse repeatedly corrected her baby's position and told her to learn from Eun-young. While Hyunjin struggled, Eun-young breastfed effortlessly, the picture of success. Finally, the nurse guided Hyunjin through a risky method using formula to entice the baby, then quickly switching to the breast. It was a last resort to establish breastfeeding. Her third attempt failed. The nurse explained that the baby had now experienced its first taste of failure. Hyunjin felt terrible. When Do-yoon returned, she tearfully confessed her struggles and guilt. Do-yoon comforted her and offered to massage her breasts. Watching his clumsy attempts, she realized she had to solve this herself. Hyunjin swallowed her pride and brought a gift to Eun-young, apologizing and asking for advice. Seeing the usually arrogant Hyunjin humbled, Eun-young suggested nipple shields and a breast pump. Finally, Hyunjin's breastfeeding issues were resolved. She began adapting to the center's jungle. After all, ingratiating herself was how she'd reach the top of her care-era familiar tactic. She wasn't doing this for herself, but for her son. She began to understand the postpartum center wasn't a paradise. Every mother faced her own hardships. They were all just persevering, carrying the weight of motherhood. As Hyunjin navigated these survival tactics, a glamorous new mother arrived, fully made up. She refused to breastfeed, opting for formula. Mrs. Hae-suk advised her that breast milk was best for the baby. Ruta retorted, "What's best for the mother? Breast milk may be good, but I choose formula." The other mothers judged her. Hyunjin returned to her room to find a gift for her son. Elsewhere, a woman wrote on masking tape, "I'm taking you away." Hyunjin, for her son's sake, had reconciled with Eun-young and adapted to the center's jungle. An uninvited guest had arrived. While Hyunjin, like the other mothers, adjusted her diet, exercised, and received massages for her baby, Ruta chose formula. This set her apart. At breakfast, Ruta arrived in slippers. The chef served a bland seaweed soup meant to promote lactation. Everyone knew it was awful but praised it politely. Ruta, however, brought her own seasonings. Mrs. Hae-suk confronted Ruta about a bottle of alcohol in her room. Ruta readily admitted to drinking. Mrs. Hae-suk scolded her, saying alcohol wasn't good for the baby. Unconcerned, Ruta accused her of making a fuss, disrespecting her privacy, and repeatedly reminded her that her name was Ruta, not Yomi's mom. After breakfast, everyone was told to prepare for an important lesson. To their surprise, the topic was identifying a baby's health through their stool. While the other mothers listened intently, Hyunjin was visibly uncomfortable and embarrassed. The instructor showed specific examples, making Hyunjin nauseous and drawing judgmental stares from the others. The thought of her baby's excrement disgusted her. Fighting back nausea, she excused herself, claiming she'd eaten too quickly. Hyunjin's awkward attempts to fit and caught Ruta's attention. Back in her room, Ruta, feeling down about her earlier behavior, watched Yoonji applying light makeup. Apparently, someone special was arriving at 3 p.m. Every mother and nurse at the center was meticulously dressing up. This person, known as the Happy Man, was the center's delivery driver. Handsome Kyung-hoon drew a crowd wherever he went. While everyone swooned over him, Eun-young remained unfazed, haughtily brushing past him. Her husband, a famous golfer, was arriving for an interview about the postpartum center. The other mothers envied the couple's apparent happiness and admired Eun-young's polished demeanor. As she basked in the praise of being a perfect mother, a flashback revealed her trapped inside a car trunk. Composing herself, she resumed her performance of selfless motherhood. Hyunjin, despite joining Eun-young's clique, felt a disconnect between her own beliefs and those of the other mothers. While they effused love for their children, Hyunjin couldn't even bring herself to say, "I love you." Under pressure, she finally managed, "I hope you become a real man." She confided in her husband, feeling like a crazy person for not being able to express maternal love. She questioned herself, worried about breastfeeding exhibiting clear signs of postpartum depression. To ease her stress, Do-yoon took her out for steak, her favorite. However, prioritizing her son's health, she ordered fish instead. Do-yoon reassured her that sacrificing her favorite food was a way of expressing love. She was just not good at showing it. Hyunjin smiled. It was comforting to have such a supportive husband. Perhaps overly elated, they went straight home after dinner, missing their son's feeding time. The nurse scolded Hyunjin, "Have you forgotten about your baby?" The baby looked upset. Hyunjin felt another wave of despair. Not only was she perceived as a bad mother, but tasks she once handled effortlessly were now overwhelming. Dejected, Hyunjin watched Ruta expertly feed her baby with formula, feeling a pang of envy. Ruta, sensing Hyunjin's feelings, invited her to her room. Hyunjin was stunned to find the room filled with lingerie. Ruta was a lingerie designer. She noticed Hyunjin's ill-fitting, uncomfortable bra and offered her a more suitable one. Ruta recognized Hyunjin and had even heard her leadership presentations. Over beers, they opened up to each other. Hyunjin confessed her struggles. Ruta then took her to the nursery. As they watched their babies, Ruta told Hyunjin, "Children want to see their mothers happy." Hyunjin realized she'd forgotten what happiness felt like. She apologized to her son, promising to learn how to be a good mother, and finally whispered, "I love you," words she'd never spoken before. Eun-young received a call from her babysitter who quit, unable to handle the disruption caused by her 2 children. Distressed, Eun-young saw no other option but to ask her mother-in-law for help. Kyung-hoon also stopped by to greet her. It turned out he was the man who rescued her from the car trunk earlier, but Eun-young ignored him, pretending not to know him and asking him to do the same. Hyunjin, reveling in her personal transformation, ran into Eun-young's group and saw them drinking. Eun-young criticized her, saying alcohol would affect her breast milk. Ruta quickly defended Hyunjin, explaining they were drinking non-alcoholic beer. Ruta and Eun-young's differing parenting philosophies sparked a disagreement among the other mothers about breastfeeding versus formula feeding. The two sides argued heatedly. Mrs. Hae-suk intervened, advising Hyunjin to carefully consider her choice. Breast milk or formula? Every decision felt overwhelming now that she was a mother. A call to her family ignited an even bigger conflict, not just within the family but one that reflected a broader societal and even international debate. Breastfeeding versus formula feeding was a genuinely difficult choice. Night fell and feeding time arrived, forcing Hyunjin to make a decision. As Hyunjin walked towards the nursing room, everyone watched expectantly. Which would she choose? Formula? Hyunjin pondered. Mrs. Hae-suk urged her to decide. Just as she was about to answer, everyone noticed the refrigerators behind them had been opened, milk spilling everywhere. A milk theft had occurred at the postpartum care center, and Eun-young's milk was among the spilled. She pointedly accused Ruta and demanded Mrs. Hae-suk investigate and provide an explanation. After a noisy argument, the mothers dispersed. Hyunjin noticed someone hiding behind a curtain and was knocked unconscious. She woke up in a strange room. The other mother turned out to be Han Hyorin, a national celebrity. Post-pregnancy weight gain had led Hyorin to increase her food intake, resulting in a 77-pound, 35 kilograms weight gain. She had considered retiring from her beloved 20-year acting career because of it. Hyunjin comforted her, sharing her own struggles. Hyunjin, too, had been at the peak of her career and now couldn't even decide on a feeding method for her baby. Meanwhile, Mrs. Hae-suk saw everything through the security cameras and learned Han Hyorin was responsible. After some persuasion from Hyorin's manager, Mrs. Hae-suk agreed not to release the footage. However, as manager Park left, he ran into reporters seeking an interview with Mrs. Hae-suk. Seeing him at the postpartum center, they speculated Han Hyorin was there too. After the milk theft incident, Hyunjin decided to abandon formula and try breastfeeding again. She received a call from a subordinate learning about a popular new director. Sensing a threat to her position and seeing her husband Do-yoon dressed for an awards ceremony, Hyunjin felt a surge of insecurity and lashed out at him. Do-yoon, hoping to share his good news, was met with unexpected anger and left dejectedly. A junior colleague picked Do-yoon up, complimenting his appearance and reminding him to put in a good word for him at the ceremony. Still fixated on the milk theft, Eun-young summoned all the mothers to hear Mrs. Hae-suk's explanation and demanded the security footage. Hyunjin, realizing the footage might reveal Han Hyorin, intervened. As Mrs. Hae-suk and Eun-young faced off, Ruta stepped in, reminding everyone that the footage could expose their own private moments. Remembering their secrets, none of the mothers agreed to release the footage. Defeated, Eun-young left. Eun-young's twin toddlers were so rambunctious that babysitters quit one after another, leaving the children unattended. Even her mother-in-law, overwhelmed by their energy, refused to help her son. Instead, she dropped the twins off at the postpartum care center, regardless of Eun-young's consent, and promptly left. Chaos ensued. Eun-young chased the twins from room to room. When feeding time arrived, she asked Yoon-ji to watch them, but even she couldn't handle the two little hellions. They escaped again. Eun-young finally found them in Ruda's room, surprisingly well-behaved. Their obedience shocked Eun-young. Hyunjin received a call from her husband who said he wouldn't be home due to a company party. She heard an unfamiliar female voice on the other end, sparking suspicion. Immediately, she called her subordinate at the chairman's office. Hyunjin was needed for a report. The news rekindled her ambition, drawing her back to familiar territory. After applying makeup and finishing the report, she dressed in professional attire and left for the office, only to discover her hard-won position had been filled. Alex Choi had presented the report in her place. Disappointed, she left. Eun-young brought Ruda a gift to thank her for watching the twins and asked how she managed to keep them calm. Ruda vaguely explained she used their favorite toys as leverage, then complimented the twins' cuteness and praised Eun-young's strength. Only Eun-young knew the sadness behind that strength. It turned out Eun-young and the delivery man, Kyung-hoon, had a history. To escape her children, she would hide in his delivery truck after work. During these times, trapped in the back, he had seen her at her worst. This explained her indifference towards him at the postpartum care center. Manager Park called Han Hyo-rin, urging her to stay in her room. Reporters knew she was at the center and suspected Hyunjin had leaked the information. Hyo-rin, disbelieving, tried repeatedly to call Hyunjin but couldn't reach her. Determined to confront her, Hyo-rin left her room and ran into the other mothers. Trying to avoid them, she hid in a massage chair, but got stuck due to her weight gain. This attracted even more attention. The national goddess was exposed. Back at the postpartum care center, Hyunjin spotted reporters outside. Remembering the pressure they create, she unleashed her pent-up frustration on them, all of which was recorded. This confirmed her presence at the center. News of her post-pregnancy weight gain hit the internet. Everyone in the dining area had been helping her, and upon her return, Hyunjin realized she was the likely source of the leak. Guilt-ridden, she faced their silent disapproval as they filed out of the room. She sought comfort from her husband, Do-yoon, but he feigned sleep until she left. He then received a text from a colleague, urging him to stop avoiding the situation. Hyunjin went to apologize. Her discharge was imminent, and reporters were waiting outside for a photo opportunity. They brainstormed disguises and outfits to no avail. Everyone sat down together to figure out a plan. Hyunjin's fear wasn't facing the press, but rather seeing how beautiful and happy the other mothers seemed, while she felt she looked this way only after giving birth. Understanding her anxiety, the other mothers opened up. Hyunjin, a first-time mom, was proud. Ruda was a single mother. Yoondi's baby was often sick. As for Eun-young, she always pretended everything was fine, but they all knew it wasn't easy for her either. They all shared a laugh. Finally, Hyunjin decided to embrace her current appearance. This was the real her. As the car pulled away from the center, Hyunjin breathed a sigh of relief. Exiting the car, she confidently faced the reporters. Addressing the false reports online, she declared she would regain her figure and become an even more mature national goddess. The reporters were taken aback. Back home, Hyunjin received a thank you call. Another mother had been stealing her breast milk because she seemingly produced the most. But Hyunjin was confused. She actually produced the least. Where was the extra milk coming from? She woke up in excruciating chest pain. It was mastitis, a common ailment after breastfeeding. Hae-suk, an older woman, informed her the pain was worse than childbirth. Hyunjin was devastated. Thankfully, Hae-suk used her 20 years of experience to massage and alleviate Hyunjin's pain. However, her husband witnessed her agony. More than the pain, Hyunjin was mortified by repeatedly losing her composure in front of him. Everyone was in the dining area. Eun-young's recent interview was published in a magazine, and the mothers passed it around. The topic was infidelity during postpartum recovery. Hyunjin, a powerhouse at work, was clueless about this issue. The other mothers explained how husbands see a different side of their wives after childbirth, not viewing them as their usual selves. Eun-young added that the postpartum period was a turning point in a marriage. Handled well, it could strengthen the bond. Otherwise, it could lead to cracks. Hyunjin thought of her husband. He had recently witnessed her less glamorous side multiple times, making her worry about potential cracks in their relationship. A staff member informed Eun-young that she had a visitor. Outside, Eun-young found a new car waiting. Everyone speculated it was a gift from her husband. Eun-young called her husband to thank him, only to discover the car was for a new advertisement he'd booked, requiring her to occasionally pose with it and post photos online. Embarrassed, she kept up the pretense with the other mothers that it was a gift, despite her disappointment. Hyunjin called her best friend to vent about potential infidelity. Despite her complaints, her actions betrayed her. Doyoon arrived to take her for a checkup, and she carefully applied makeup, only for him to be indifferent, even commenting that she was overdressed. On the verge of snapping, she remembered Eun-young's advice and softened her tone. She suggested skipping the checkup for a movie date, but Doyoon declined, prioritizing the appointment. He then presented her with a gift, a baby carrier. Hyunjin frowned. "This isn't for me, honey. It's clearly for the baby." At the hospital, her checkup came back normal. The doctor advised against intimacy for 6 months postpartum. Hyunjin glanced at her husband, embarrassed, but he just laughed. Confused by his reaction, she started overthinking. On the way back to the center, Hyunjin repeatedly tried to broach the subject but couldn't find the words. She suggested dinner, but Doyoon declined, claiming a prior engagement. His female colleague called, and instead of answering, he silenced his phone. This fueled Hyunjin's suspicions, convinced he was having an affair. To ease her anxiety, she joined the other mothers for outdoor yoga. A disheveled man with messy hair suddenly appeared, startling them. Hae-suk rushed over, introducing him as her son, shocking everyone. Hyunjin whispered to Ruda about the man, only for Ruda to casually reveal he was her boyfriend. Everyone was stunned again. Ruda and her boyfriend shared a passionate kiss and left, leaving the mothers speechless and wide-eyed. Hae-suk, Ruda's mother-in-law, watched them go. Ruda and her boyfriend visited their baby. He apologized for not being there for the birth, but she assured him it was okay, prioritizing his dreams. Back in her room, Hyunjin found Doyoon dressed in a suit, ready to leave. He vaguely explained he was attending a colleague's father's funeral and might not return that night. After he left, Hyunjin tried calling the colleague to offer condolences, only to find vacation photos on their social media. The colleague was out of town and not answering calls. Hyunjin knew her husband had lied. Feeling lost and confused about her marriage, she joined the other mothers for afternoon tea. Staff brought out a cake. It was Eun-young's birthday. Dressed up and ready to go out, she received birthday wishes from the others. Beaming, she announced her husband was taking her out to celebrate. Hyunjin watched Eun-young's happiness, unable to share her joy. In reality, Eun-young was at her son's preschool. The twins had pulled another student's tooth, and the angry parents confronted her about her parenting. Eun-young could only apologize. Back in her car, her husband called to ask about the situation, demanding she resolve it discreetly to avoid jeopardizing his TV appearance. This getting out wouldn't be good. He then reminded her to take photos with the new car for the advertisement before abruptly ending the call. He had completely forgotten her birthday. Ruda was comparing baby formulas in her room when a knock interrupted her. Outside was a toy car with a note, "Follow me." She went to the center's courtyard, where her boyfriend, dressed in a suit, awaited. He proposed in front of everyone. Logically, they had been together for a long time, had a child, and marriage seemed like the next step. But just as the ring was about to be placed on her finger, Ruda declined the proposal. She confessed she didn't want to get married and never had. The other mothers, unaware of the situation, assumed her refusal stemmed from potential mother-in-law issues. Back in her room, Hyunjin repeatedly called her husband, but he didn't answer. She observed Ruda, who seemed unhappy despite the proposal. Ruda asked Hyunjin about marriage and if she was happy, reflecting on the shift in her own relationship after childbirth. Hyunjin advised Ruda not to seek others' opinions on marriage but to follow her heart. Touched, Ruda acknowledged that everyone else encouraged marriage while Hyunjin was the only one who asked about her own feelings. Wanting to cheer Hyunjin up, Ruda snuck her out. At the plaza, Ruda suggested fried chicken and beer, but Hyunjin declined, fearing Hae-suk's disapproval. Ruda then suggested cycling, but Hyunjin remembered articles about postpartum cycling leading to lower body paralysis. Next, Ruda proposed an escape room, but Hyunjin pointed out that in their current physical and mental states, they'd never escape. Hyunjin sighed, lamenting how little they could do postpartum. As they were leaving, they bumped into Eun-young. Eun-young remarked that Hyunjin always seemed to witness her worst moments. Their first encounter was in the elevator, and now Hyunjin was witnessing her spending her birthday alone. Hyunjin confided her worries. Eun-young dismissed them as normal, explaining how women change after childbirth, transitioning from wife to mother, sometimes struggling to return to the wife role. Remembering her happy times with Do-yoon, Hyunjin stood up abruptly, refusing to accept the current state of their relationship as normal. She called Do-yoon again. A nurse answered. The three women rushed to the hospital and found Do-yoon in the hallway. Both he and Hyunjin froze. He hadn't been having an affair. He had hemorrhoids. He'd endured the pain without surgery to care for her, until it worsened, requiring immediate intervention. That's why he had been lying. All suspicions cleared. Their relationship returned to its former sweetness. As they embraced, Eun-young and Ruda slipped away. Back at the center, Ruda found her boyfriend waiting. He expressed his desire for them to be a family and promised to strive to be the man and father she wanted. Ruda hesitated. Eun-young's husband returned, handing her an envelope and complaining that she hadn't mentioned her birthday. Looking at the money inside, Eun-young's disappointment deepened. Then, a staff member delivered a beautifully wrapped birthday gift. Inside was a lipstick and a card signed Gu-hun. It triggered a memory. Eun-young, exhausted from caring for the twins alone, had received a birthday flower basket from her company. Gu-hun, a delivery driver, had witnessed this, remembered her birthday, and played with the twins. In the living room, piano music filled the air. As one song ended, another began Happy Birthday. During afternoon tea, the mothers discussed finding postpartum nannies. Hyunjin struggled to connect with their conversation. They explained that finding a competent nanny often required booking months in advance, even during pregnancy. Hyunjin learned a lot but remained unconcerned. She wouldn't need a nanny, her mother would help. She received a text from her new colleague, Alex Choi. In an hour, they would meet at the postpartum center. Alex was Hyunjin's professional rival. She returned to her room, donned her metaphorical armor, and received encouragement from her husband. Arriving in the living room, Hyunjin was surprised to find Alex Choi was a woman. Her guard immediately lowered, and they began chatting. They discovered a shared love of zombie movies. Hyunjin found herself warming to her competitor. However, behind Alex's smile was a hidden agenda. She suggested Hyunjin take a full year off to care for the baby. Hyunjin, a seasoned professional, sensed the underlying threat. She saw the manipulative tactic and politely dismissed her rival. In another room, Ruda was with her boyfriend. Haesuk knocked, wanting to talk. She scolded them for their lack of responsibility as parents. A child deserves to grow up in a traditional family, she argued, and marriage signifies a complete one. Ruda countered, believing everyone has their own path to happiness. She chose her own way for herself and her child. Remaining unmarried was her current happiest choice. Haesuk retorted, "You think you know everything about happiness, but how can you be so sure?" She then left the room. In her room, Hyunjin called her mother. Her mother sensed her daughter's unhappiness. Hyunjin confessed that someone had replaced her at work. Her mother, surprisingly, advised her to take some time off. It turned out her frozen shoulder had returned and required surgery. She'd struggled with this condition for years, and a permanent solution remained elusive. After offering to help with the baby, Hyunjin's mother ended the call, leaving her daughter in turmoil. When Do-yoon arrived home, he found his wife sitting outside, lost in thought. He asked what was wrong. Hyunjin explained that her mother couldn't help with the baby. She felt immense guilt. Her initial reaction to her mother's news wasn't concern for her health, but worry about work and childcare. Do-yoon helped brainstorm solutions. They considered asking his mother to watch the baby. The baby's umbilical cord stump fell off. The nurse congratulated Hyunjin. This symbolized the baby's complete independence from the mother. Looking at the umbilical cord and recalling her mother's call, Hyunjin had a realization. Even her baby was independent now, yet she was still relying on her mother. Shame washed over her. Do-yoon returned home with gifts, ready to ask his mother for help. He discovered his sister was pregnant with her second child. Seeing this, Do-yoon hesitated. Eun-young's twins were so rambunctious that nannies frequently quit, forcing her into a constant search for new childcare. Hyunjin asked Eun-young for help. At that moment, Haesuk arrived with exciting news. A hidden gem in the nanny world had appeared. She instructed Eun-young and Hyun-jin to prepare for interviews. However, this top-tier nanny had already been claimed by another family. Normally, families interviewed nannies. Now, Hyun-jin and Eun-young found themselves competing for this individual. On interview day, Hyun-jin wore a sharp black outfit. Eun-young was equally polished. They began subtly undermining each other, vying for the prized nanny. After learning about their families, Young-mi, the nanny, questioned their childcare philosophies. Hyun-jin stumbled, only managing to answer one question adequately. Finally, at the crucial moment, Hyun-jin played the sympathy card. She explained her mother's age and her own inexperience as a first-time mother, emphasizing her need for Young-mi's expertise. Eun-young, seeing this, launched her own charm offensive, even offering a gift. Ultimately, Eun-young secured Young-mi's services. Hyun-jin began to understand the struggles of mothers returning to work after maternity leave. Though sympathetic, they were desperate for childcare. These mothers were reluctant to abandon their careers and passions. Ruta was sleeping in the living room. Seeing this, Hae-suk told her to go back to her room. Ruta's dizziness was due to her lack of movement after giving birth. She'd always assumed Hae-suk disliked her, hence her constant defiance. Hae-suk explained that Ruta's dizziness and anemia stemmed from not keeping warm and her regular diet. Ruta finally realized Hae-suk actually cared about her. In the living room, Hyun-jin's mother visited. She brought non-fishy soybean paste fish stew, urging Hyun-jin to eat more. Hyun-jin reacted irritably, insisting she wasn't a child. Her mother hit the nail on the head. Hyun-jin was upset because she couldn't help with the baby. A mother truly knows her daughter best. Hyun-jin was a strong woman. Unable to find a nanny and unable to take time off, she'd fought hard for her position. Her mother comforted her and offered solutions. This eased Hyun-jin's worries. Remembering her mother's care and warm words, she obediently finished the stew. Meanwhile, Kyung-hoon made his usual delivery to the postpartum center. Eun-young watched from her vanity as he approached, but she intercepted him before he could hand over the package. She returned his birthday gift. Kyung-hoon insisted it was simply a thank-you gift between friends. It turned out he'd known Eun-young for a while, observing her daily struggles as he made deliveries. He'd played Happy Birthday to offer comfort. Before leaving, Eun-young encouraged him to pursue his piano talent. Her words had a profound impact, inspiring him to continue playing. Today was Kyung-hoon's last delivery. He gave Eun-young a ticket to his upcoming performance. Ji-yoon told Hyun-jin his sister was pregnant, so their mother couldn't help with the baby. If they couldn't find a solution, he would stay home. Hyun-jin took his hand. It wasn't over yet. She hoped they wouldn't have to abandon their dreams. Neither of them necessarily had to sacrifice their career. Everything in the world has a name. Some names are chosen with aspirations for the child's future. Others reflect the parent's feelings. And some titles, no matter how much we yearn for them, can't be simply acquired like the title of mother. The mothers gathered for afternoon tea, discussing baby names. Eun-young explained that after choosing a name, they would register the birth, legally solidifying the bond between mother and child. Hyun-jin gave her husband the birth registration form. They struggled with naming their child. Finally, Ji-yoon took on the responsibility, wanting to do this one thing for his child as a father. In the nursing room, Ruta's perspective had shifted. Through breastfeeding and realizing Hae-suk's genuine care, she'd softened considerably. She no longer defied Hae-suk and started taking better care of herself, even drinking seaweed soup. Hae-suk, passing by, smiled approvingly. After dinner, Ruta asked Eun-young to borrow some parenting books. She still prioritized herself but was now investing more effort in her child's care. Eun-young agreed to help her find a suitable book. Observing Ruta's unusual behavior during a friendly call with a male friend, Eun-young commented that after marriage, close relationships with the opposite sex could be perceived negatively. Ruta felt if she wasn't doing anything wrong, she had nothing to fear. She shouldn't care about others' opinions. Those who lived for others' approval might not even be true friends. This didn't stop Eun-young from thinking about Kyung-hoon. He was always friendly and thoughtful, yet she deliberately avoided him. Ruta also entrusted the baby's naming to the father. The two fathers met in the dining room. Ji-yoon was agonizing over the perfect name. At the same time, Ji-yoon became the helpful dad, advising Ruta's boyfriend on navigating the postpartum center. Both fathers searched books for baby names, but without success. Ready to consult an expert, they visited a fortune teller specializing in baby names. The fortune teller, through divination, revealed their marital situations. Hyunjin had a fiery personality, while Ruta wasn't married because marriage wasn't in her destiny. Ruta's boyfriend, angered, prepared to leave. The fortune teller then declared the two babies were destined to be a pair, recapturing the father's attention. However, seeing the exorbitant naming fee, they quickly excused themselves. After the fortune teller fiasco, a friend suggested Hyunjin seek help on an online forum for mothers. She chose the username SuperGlueMom, only to find it was already taken. The forum had a clear hierarchy. To become a pro mom, one needed at least 20 comments, 50 likes, and 30 posts. This proved more challenging than a promotion for Hyunjin. The nurse brought her baby in for bonding time. Shortly after the nurse left, Hyunjin accidentally startled her baby into tears. Hearing the cries, Yoonji rushed over and helped soothe the baby to sleep. The two mothers chatted. Hyunjin shared her naming struggles. Yoonji suggested Jaein Yu, Jaein meaning strong and Yu meaning big. Hyunjin liked it and wondered why Yoonji hadn't used it for her own child. Yoonji explained her in-laws insisted on a name from the family registry. Hyunjin turned to her sleeping son and whispered, "Do you like this name?" Eunyoung's husband suggested they attend a media event together. He stressed its importance for his career. Eunyoung was torn between attending Kyunghoon's piano performance and supporting her husband. Meanwhile, Hyunjin was also facing a dilemma. She frantically posted on the forum to increase her rank. Daeun returned home, suggesting the name Daeun, hoping their child would face future challenges with optimism. This resonated with Hyunjin. They decided on Rayon. But joy for some meant sorrow for others. Yoonji embroidered Jaein Yu onto Hyunjin's son's clothes. Seeing Hyunjin gone on the baby's name tag in the nursery, Hyunjin confronted Yoonji, leading to a heated argument. Back in her room, Yoonji watched Hyunjin's baby through the nursery camera connected to each mother's phone. Realizing her transgression, she apologized to Hyunjin and gifted the baby an outfit. The baby suddenly cried. Yoonji rushed to comfort him. Opening the gift, Hyunjin saw the name on the tag and realized Yoonji was the one leaving gifts and notes. The truth was out. Yoonji's facade crumbled. She accused Hyunjin of being unfit and neglectful, only wanting to abandon her child and return to work. Yoonji clutched the baby, completely distraught. Fortunately, Haesuk arrived and calmed her down. She explained to Hyunjin that Yoonji's baby had died. Her baby's nickname was also Super Glue. Yoonji had been the one leaving breast milk in the shared fridge for mothers with low supply. This experience forced Hyunjin to reflect. Her negligence had put her son at risk. She felt unworthy of motherhood. Just then, Hyunjin passed the forum's pro-mom requirements. She opened the site and discovered Super Glue Mom was Yoonji. Her posts chronicled her difficult journey to pregnancy, finally succeeding after 3 attempts. She chose Super Glue, hoping her baby would stick with her, never to leave. But tragedy struck. The newborn didn't breathe. This is the most heartbreaking thing for a mother, to endure 9 months and 10 days of pregnancy, only to not even hear her child's cry. Afterwards, Daeun moved to the postpartum care center. He lost his appetite and spent his days lying in bed, washing his face with tears, until one day, Hyunjin moved into the room across from him. He overheard Mrs. Haesuk calling Hyunjin a glue-like mom, and he finally perked up and left his room. Eunyoung, dressed impeccably, attended an event with her husband. During the event, she felt her milk leaking. Quickly, it seeped through her dress. Her husband, completely oblivious, was busy posing for photos with reporters, directing their poses. Eunyoung had to strike a series of awkward poses, using her hand to cover her chest, afraid of people seeing the milk stain. The reporter kept asking them to clink glasses for a photo. Seeing this, Eunyoung deliberately spilled wine on her dress to hide the milk stain. Finally, the event ended. Her husband complained, saying she embarrassed him in front of the reporters. Eunyoung grabbed a nearby jacket and went to the restroom to pump her milk. She received a text from Kyunghoon and immediately rushed to his performance. After listening to his piece, Eunyoung reminisced about their past. After the concert, they sat in a cafe and talked. Eunyoung was recognized by an acquaintance, but she lied and said Kyunghoon was her cousin, then hurriedly left. But Kyunghoon followed her out, calling after her in a warm voice, Sister Eun-young. She started running faster, but tripped and fell. He helped her and bought her some medicine. This time, Eun-young faced herself honestly, admitting that she had come specifically to the concert, not just passed by coincidentally. She felt troubled, with nowhere to go, so she had come here. Some might argue that married people can still have friendships with the opposite sex. But married people like Eun-young don't see it that way. She worried about what others would think and didn't want to be caught. After all, she was a mother and a wife. Kyung-hoon helped Eun-young apply the medicine to her scrape. She always took care of others' wounds, but ignored her own pain. Kyung-hoon said she deserved to be happier. Eun-young was deeply touched by his words. She had sacrificed everything for her family. For the first time, someone told her that she, too, was important. After Yoonji's incident, Hyunjin also started questioning whether she was qualified to be a mother. The day to leave the postpartum care center was approaching. Hyunjin became extremely anxious. She wasn't confident in her ability to care for her baby. Ji-yoon comforted her, saying that she was a wonderful wife. Despite the hardships of pregnancy, she insisted on working and fulfilling her responsibilities. As her belly grew bigger, she couldn't sleep through the night, but she never complained once. Compared to other mothers, Hyunjin was older, but she was still diligently learning about childcare. The old Hyunjin would often run to the beach alone to relieve stress. Now, she no longer had the option of running away, because her mind was always on her child. All of this proved that Hyunjin was a good mother. In the blink of an eye, it was the mother's final class, taught by Mrs. Hae-suk. During the class, she asked the mothers to practice caring for the babies themselves. But whether it was soothing or performing emergency procedures on the baby dolls, only Hyunjin couldn't keep up with the others. She either dropped the baby doll or bent its head and neck incorrectly. Within an hour, Hyunjin endangered the life of the baby 5 times. This made her even more anxious, to the point where she was afraid to hold her own baby. Hyunjin asked the nurse, "How can you read a baby's mind like that?" It turned out that the nurse also couldn't be close to her own child before, due to work. She missed out on spending time with her child and missed the moments when the child learned to crawl, stand, and walk. Ruta still had difficulty facing her family. So, whenever her boyfriend mentioned his parents, she would deliberately change the subject. Ruta's boyfriend, without telling her, secretly brought her father to the postpartum care center. This infuriated her, and she immediately left. Meanwhile, Ruta's boyfriend and future father-in-law were sitting outside chatting. Upon hearing that the boyfriend was studying medicine, the father expressed his delight. "Then you'll definitely make a lot of money." He also complained that his daughter should have gotten married before having a second child. "How much can you make selling lingerie?" the boyfriend retorted. "Ruta makes 100 times more than I do." Hearing that his daughter was making good money, the father's eyes lit up like car headlights. The boyfriend, finally understanding the man's true nature, switched his form of address to the more distant sir. Ruta's father continued to lie, claiming he didn't have much time left to live and just wanted to see his daughter to ask for some money. Upon arriving at the center, he hadn't bothered to ask about his daughter's well-being or even see his grandchild. But at the mention of money, his eyes gleamed. It was truly shameful to have a father like that. The boyfriend didn't want to say anything more. Just then, Mrs. Hae-suk appeared and immediately slapped the man, yelling, "Get out! If you don't, I'll call the police." It turned out that Ruta's father had gone bankrupt, then ran off with his mistress, leaving Ruta and her mother to clean up the mess. Witnessing her mother's broken life after marriage, Ruta became afraid of marriage. Mrs. Hae-suk comforted her. "Not all families are happy, but not all are unhappy either. You shouldn't be afraid to try." For their last dinner at the postpartum care center, the mothers decided to have a small gathering. Everyone brought their favorite games and food. Hyunjin suddenly realized something. Although each mother was different, they all had something in common: their love for their children. Everyone who met at the postpartum center had temporarily put aside their dreams for their children. Some had dreamed of being ambitious businesswomen, others of traveling the world, and others of becoming physicists. Eun-young had also changed. She shared that she used to be the president of a TVXQ fan club. No one could believe someone as elegant as her had once been a passionate fan. She even performed a TVXQ dance in front of everyone, making the whole room burst into laughter. Now everyone believed her. After the gathering, Hyunjin decided to take a year off work to stay home and care for Areon. Initially, she had planned to firmly request leave, but she was captivated by a new project. Not only did she not get leave, but she also had to travel more for work and take on a heavier workload. Hyunjin's request for leave was denied. Although she was given the opportunity to handle more important projects, she didn't feel happy. Eun-young, now a full-time homemaker, comforted Hyunjin. Mothers are always selfish because we are human too. When raising children, the most important thing is that you are happy. If the mother isn't happy, the child won't be happy either. After her conversation with Kyung-hoon, Eun-young had also learned to value herself, no longer blindly sacrificing for her family or living for the approval of others. Her husband also apologized. Not because he didn't care about her, but because, "You always said you were fine. Over time, I really thought you were fine." Eun-young then realized that the problem between her and her husband wasn't a lack of caring, but a lack of communication. Finally, the day came to leave the postpartum care center. Each mother had, in some way, resolved their worries. Hyunjin stuck to her decision to be both a boss and a mother. Eun-young had resolved the issues in her marriage. And Ruta had changed her perspective on marriage and decided to marry her boyfriend. You think this is a happy ending, right? Not at all. After leaving the postpartum care center, each mother had to personally care for their babies. In the middle of the night, Deyoon rocked the baby to sleep while Hyunjin sat next to him, pumping milk. Eun-young woke up her sound-asleep husband to change diapers so she could get some rest. Real life had just begun. But life, inevitably, has its bittersweet moments.